What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to ICNV Driversedition. And today I have a very interesting conversation for you. I met a person in person. I know somebody online, and somebody sent me a question, all with the same focal point, the conversations we've been having lately. And so I think at this point, I've made a lot of videos as recently talking about the Grand Sport, some about the Grand Sport X, but many about the pricing and the bargaining deals you can get on Z06s and E-Race today. And I think at this point, it's really interesting that there's three people today in the same situation that have a decision to make. So let's talk about the conversation piece, and you let me know whether buying the Grand Sport X, or Z06 would be the decision you would make. Let's see where you would stand in all three scenarios. Let's talk about it. So if you've been following the channel, I've made a couple interesting videos discussing the Grand Sport X, the possibility of the discounts and money you can save to buy a Z06. Well, there are some real world scenarios taking place. I met a guy this past Tuesday at a cruise night, and the conversation originally just started about Corvettes, changing out wheels, options, specs, things of that nature. And ultimately, I feel like every Corvette conversation from people who are just entering the C8 market space usually starts out with, I don't see the difference between a 1LT or a 2LT or a 1LZ or a 2LZ. And that usually sparks the trend on most of the conversations, especially when people jump to 3LZs, because there's always that argument, there is no reason or there's no need for a 3LZ. And I'm just going to be honest with you. The 3LZ and typically the 3LT, the biggest benefit of going to those is customization. Just so we can get this out the way. Typically, you open up 29 different interior options or combinations you can put together to create your car, whether it's an all adrenaline red interior, to a two-tone interior, to a suede inserted seat interior, to so many different combinations you can put together with different colors, from the Santorini blue all the way down to the gray, which is more of a white looking interior, and so forth. You have the all tan interior, as they call the all natural interior. There are so many color combinations and seat options you can put together by unlocking the 3LT. So like I stated before, the 3LT is for the person that really wants a unique looking car and the most customization they can do to their interior. Now that we got that part out the way, some of you might actually need to understand that. What has actually happened is, I was sitting down with this guy having this conversation. Well, technically we were standing, but he mentioned to me that he has just got notified that by two different dealers that in the next upcoming allocation cycle, he will be able to build his car. I guess that means for the dealership's next upcoming allocation cycle. I'm not even sure if it's the actual allocation cycle with GM, but both dealers notify him his place on the list for a Grand Sport X. With their next upcoming allocation, he will be able to build a car. So he started scrambling as we were talking about different options, because he wanted to lay out a car that was under $125,000 for a Grand Sport X, but he wanted to go to at least a 2LT because there were certain things he wanted in the car, but he was trying to ask me what were the must-have items or what should he choose. And part of the reason why he asked me this was because he said, I heard or I saw your channel, you sat there and said you help people get cars. I'm like, that's not quite how that works. Meaning I don't really help people spec out cars. I may discuss some options every now and then, but I don't help you build the car you desire. Typically what I do is just help you find the car that you desire if it's already in the market space, and how to get the best deal possible on it. So that's neither here nor there. But ultimately, so just going back and forth with this conversation piece with him, there is about just over $12,000 in options he wants to put on this car. and he's going back and forth with 2 to 3 different bills, all circling around the same target range of 125,000. He just has to make a decision. But now, with that being stated, there is a dealership in our area. I'm not going to mention the name. Honestly, part of the reasons why, because I don't remember the name of the dealership. They had a pitch gray metallic car on the lot, but it was a sold unit. So he went to go see the pitch gray car because whoever his salesman was told him the car is going to be there for X amount of days before the person actually comes in and picks it up, or they're shipping it out. I really don't remember the specifics of that part because I didn't think it was significant. But my point is, so he went to the dealership to actually look at this pitch gray metallic car. And when he got to the dealer, remember, he's targeting a Grand Sport X. Well, the dealership actually had a Grand Sport in their inventory. And with a small conversation about this Grand Sport, they actually informed him that he could buy that Grand Sport for $2,000 off. But he also gets supplier discount. Now, for many people, they don't understand employee and supplier are 2 different discounts, but he gets GM supplier discount. So they will allow him to put his GM supplier discount and give an additional $2,000 off. Plus, I think he gets some $4,000 loyalty cash and so forth. So at this point, they were willing to give him discounts on a 2027 Grand Sport that they had sitting on the lot. That inventory was about $111,000, $112,000. So it had a lot of options he desired, but it was missing that X factor. Now, the fact that he could get that car this early intrigued him. But in the midst of that conversation, they also have on their lot a 2026 Blade Silver C8 Z06. This Z06 had an MSRP of right around $137,000. And it had a lot of options on it. It was a 2LZ. It did have the GT2 seats, I believe nose lift and some other stuff. He was giving me the specs of the car. But what happened with this car is, based off his supplier discount, the discounts they were willing to put on the car, and everything that he qualified for, he was able, hear me correctly, he would have been able to leave today with this Z06 for $109,000. And that's where the conversation piece started, because now he's asking me, do I really believe that the Z06 is just as competitive or a better car than the Grand Sport X? And I had to tell him, all BS aside, there is no Grand Sport X on the street that I can get my hands on or that I've actually seen in person to really tell you how I truly feel about the Grand Sport X. But based off all the information provided by the engineers and some of the people that have actually test driven the car, I don't think there's a significant enough difference that you would miss the performance that you can get from a Grand Sport X unless you like to race stoplight to stoplight and you are someone who loves the performance under 100 miles per hour. I don't really buy into the whole tracking concept as the separation of the cars because the Z06 still is a nice performer on the streets. It's just the closest thing to a race car you can get legally on the streets of the United States. Let's just say that. It's the closest thing to a race car that you can legally purchase for the streets. And I feel like they both have their own position in the pecking order, but they both are fun cars. So now he's sitting back, I guess, stressing himself out and trying to make the right decision. And to me, I think it's coming down to my opinion. It's more about his budget than it is the car. Because at some point, the fact that he can get a Z06 brand new for $109K is really weighing heavy on him because he's thinking about that $125,000 price point and what he's missing. So maybe the options matter too. But you let me know in the comments below, based on this scenario, what would you do? Now, I think this is kind of interesting because someone else reached out with a very similar scenario. And I have to laugh at this because they told me a very similar scenario, that they actually have a allocation for a Grand Sport X coming up, and they can actually buy a Grand Sport X now that's supposed to be inbound to the dealership with a slight markup. It's more spec'd out than they actually would build on their own Grand Sport, but the fact that they can get this car within, I guess, the next week or two is really making it a viable option, because in their mind, this conversation started out with, well, how did it feel to have my car so early in the game that a lot of people didn't have C8s when I had my car? And like I'm trying to explain to him, well, in this case, having a Grand Sport X, I don't think it's going to be a huge build number car anyway, but to get one of the earlier production models of a Grand Sport X, you're going to probably draw a lot of attention at any car meet, car show you go to. But it's also just a wide body C8. To me, it's a more advanced version of an E-Ray. And for that purpose alone, only a small amount of real Corvette enthusiasts are really going to care about this car. It may be more of a statement piece for you than it is for the next person. But being one of the first people to have it, if you are a YouTuber, you're going to make a lot of content, or you have the opportunity to make a lot of content and get a lot of views and followings. So it should at least help boost your income and revenue streams. But I don't know if that's a really heavy part on his conversation piece, because as quick as he said these two options to me, he also turned around and said they have a Z06 on their lot that they are really heavily discounting. And this Z06 had $130,000 MSRP, and he was able to get this car just over the starting price of a Grand Sport X, which was somewhere around $111,000, $112,000, somewhere in that range. So now he's in a similar scenario. I'm not going to say similar, because he's really, I don't think financing is an issue for this person, or should I say the money. I think it's more about the respect factor and what he's getting from the car, because he did mention that he wouldn't be tracking the car. It would be something he would just use every day and play on the streets. And I know for everybody out there, they're going to say the all-wheel drive hybrid system is the best performing daily driver car you can possibly buy. But the Z06 is still a fairly decent daily driver. It's not lacking compared to the Grand Sport, the Grand Sport X, or the E-Ray in performance that much that makes a significant difference in daily driving capabilities. I want people to understand that. So in this situation, I feel like the Z06 is still a fairly decent option because of the discount on the car. Correct? You hear me correctly? Because of the discount on the car, I think the Z06 is still a fairly nice option. I feel like early ownership in the Grand Sport X game is worth it for the right person. I will refer back to Street Speed when he sat there and said he really paid over MSRP for ZR1 because it was so important for him to have one of the first cars on the street just for content purposes and actually to boost his revenue stream. So if you're in it for that purpose, I think getting an early model Grand Sport will be very significant, especially if you're looking to order a car now or the next allocation cycle. You're probably going to hit the 3-week shutdown from the plant. They're also going to one shift, and the one shift over is going to kind of probably delay the production. So in all estimations, he probably won't see his Grand Sport X until probably late November, early December, I would say right around the Christmas holiday season. And I'm not even sure it's precisely where he lives at, but that concern right there from, let's just say 2 weeks from now to 4 months from now, that's the big shift, especially while other people are out there putting out content. So I ask you again, in scenario B, which car would you actually purchase? Would you actually just wait, take your own allocation and not pay over MSRP for a car? Or would you take the over MSRP car by $2,000, maybe a little bit more, not sure, and get a car early in the game and create content and do your best to increase or make up the difference from the revenue that you spent on the cash to acquire the car? Or would you sit there and say this Z06, which has a lot of equipment and is pretty much fairly right around the price range of the Grand Sport X you want to build, but yet you can get it for so much less money? Does that slight difference in performance or whatever's driving you to desire a Grand Sport X, is it worth that purchase? Let me know in the comments below which one you would take. Now, here's my third scenario, which this person did not reach out to me. The person I'm going to comment on now, and I'm not going to make too much of a heavy statement on this. I just want to share the situation. There is a person I haven't really linked up in person, but we've had several conversations, and his YouTube channel is called E All-Wheel Drive. He's actually had 2 E-Rays that I know of, and we had conversations and started talking with each other based off E-Ray performance and things of that nature, because he provides a lot of E-Ray content, and I like to, how can I say it, validate and hear the owner's perspective of vehicles when I talk about them. That way I share information to you guys, it can be more realistic and more accurate. We were supposed to meet up. We will probably still meet up at some point, but I happened to see on, I want to say Saturday, that he dropped the video, maybe Friday, discussing this very same conversation. And what's even funnier to me is I really believe the second scenario I just discussed with you, they're talking about the same 2 cars. I can't prove it unless the person reaches back out and I verify the dealership, and I can't remember the dealership. I can go back and look at his video. But I think they're talking about the same 2 cars. And in this scenario, their scenario is almost mirrored, meaning that he has the opportunity to order a Grand Sport X. He wants to build it a certain way. But what he did say is they have a red Grand Sport X inbound that the dealership actually spec'd out and ordered. It has more equipment than he would put on his car. And he really wasn't looking for torch red. But he can get his hand on this inbound unit early in the game. He did not mention anything about over MSRP pricing, except the fact that they gave him the opportunity, or he has the opportunity to make a decision on buying this car. The reason he came across this is because he does a lot of business with this particular dealer, and he went into the dealership, I'm guessing, to see a specific color on a car that he was considering ordering. So he's still working out the specifics of his spec, but I think it's more so color options than anything. And while he was on the dealership and leaving, he has a video. He saw a Blade Silver Z06 sitting on the lot. And quickly in a conversation with his salesman, this car was 130 something thousand. I don't remember the exact number. And they gave him paperwork to purchase that car. Whereas with all his discounts, this Blade Silver Z06 would come up to 107,000 for him to buy. Now, he's sitting there saying he really wants the Grand Sport X. He likes his build, but the fact that this Z06, which he's been in one, I can't remember if he's driven one or whatever, but like he said, driving it and ownership is always 2 different things. And I completely 100% agree. Because when you own the car, over time, you really start to realize what matters to you and what don't matter. So owning the car and desiring the ownership is 2 different things, especially when you just get driving experience with a car behind the wheel for a short amount of time. And you may think you need an option every day, but you don't. Or you may think this matters so much, but it doesn't. So like he said, owning the car and driving the car is 2 different experiences. And at this point, he's now debating, should he buy that Z06 that is so heavily discounted? And as he stated, it has more options than he would spec on his Grand Sport X. And between the 2 cars, the performance does overlap. The engineers have come out and said the Z06 is still the superior car. People want to argue that, who haven't driven either one of the cars. So that's an argument for a whole nother conversation. And at this point, I'm tired of having it. I have multiple videos out discussing this. But in his perspective, is that discount enough to change his mind? He hasn't made a decision as of yet by the time I made this video, but it's definitely a conversation piece he's having with his following and his channel. And I would like to say, or I'd like to ask, if you take a look at his video, or if you've already seen his video, or just in this scenario, again, Grand Sport X build, Z06 option, new Grand Sport X delivery. I don't think he's actually caring about the content production, which is amazing to me because I would believe this early in the game, you would just buy the red Grand Sport X if it wasn't a financial problem. And you get that car, you make some quick content, and I would honestly sit there and say I would make as much content as I possibly could within 4 to 6 weeks, and then I would take the car and sell it. But I guess if he does that, GM will stop him from getting another car. I don't even know if they have that out there anymore. But that would be an option I would strongly consider, especially, and I say this again, especially since I've seen several other YouTubers do it and not get penalized. But that's just on me. Now, with that being said, in this scenario, let's call this scenario C. Would that Z06 for $107,000 compared to the Z06 we talked about earlier for $109,000 and possibly the same Z06 for $112,000, for $109,000, I'm sorry, for $107,000, would you take this Z06? Do you believe the Grand Sport X is that significant that you would not make any changes, or you would not take this 2026 brand new car with, I believe, 5 to 13 miles on somewhere in that range? Would you not take this car? These are the conversations that are starting to pick up more and more traction. I know some of you watching my channel are going to say Grand Sport X all the way, no sacrifices, no one-year-old cars. We're not even talking about pre-owned. And in every scenario where I've had a physical conversation with a person about this, it's about a new car that they actually seen. And I know some people are going to say it's hard to find the car you want or the spec you want on the market today. Well, these are specs they're willing to tolerate. And if you had a spec option you were willing to tolerate as a new option at a heavily discounted price, which car would you take? If you ask me, I really would say it's a hard decision between that Z06 and that early Grand Sport X allocation. And the only reason I say that is because I believe, especially with focusing strictly on content, the difference in the pricing, I believe I can make that early allocation Grand Sport X worth the difference in money from the Grand Sport X build that everyone has brought to me. Let's put it that way. I can't say I can make up that gap in discounts on the Z06, but I do believe in every build spec I've heard for the Grand Sport X in all three scenarios that the cost and difference of that early allocation on that red Grand Sport X, I believe I can make that up with content. So in my opinion, I think that might be the car I would probably heavily favor. But honestly, I don't know, man. A Z06 heavily discounted and not sure how the market's going to play with content, and if the Grand Sport X is really going to be a content draw, say 3-6 months down the line, it's a hard conversation to have if you ask me. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below. ICNV Driversedition. Go ahead, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, join the ICNV Driversedition community. We are an interactive community, which means if you hit me up on any one of my social media platforms or in the comments below, I do my best to respond. And if the topic you bring up is interesting enough, I may even shoot a video on it. But don't forget, we're also a community of car enthusiasts that love to drive cars that make you turn your head, that aren't your everyday people movers. If you're one of those individuals, lock into the channel, subscribe to your boy. We have more interesting content like this coming your way, and you don't want to miss out. Remember, we were all made in his image and given dominion over the world, which means we weren't just meant to be. So chase your dreams, build your visions, never ever give up. We were all given unique gifts to become the best versions of us that we can possibly be. So step into your calling and become the blessing to the world that you were meant to be. Remember, you can be the one and not the one at the same time, because it's okay to be unique. Just remember to stay humble, stay focused, and stay blessed. And I'll see you in these streets. Peace.